All right, so I guess I like to begin with, I mean, you're obviously here because you're interested, but I like to remind marketers of the importance of social media, especially for content marketing, so the why bother. So I believe that with digital, and obviously content marketing is part of this, influencer marketing is part of this, your options are sort of limited. You really need to be doing all of this. And there are some companies that either go all in on social media, forget the other parts, or they just think that social media is really a waste of time and they do not give it the TLC that it deserves. So I believe that every component here deserves equal attention, and obviously social media is an important part of everything you see there. To further simplify that, when I published that Age of Influence, it came out on the day that California went into lockdown, March 17, 2020. Perfect time to publish a book. So I had to go 100% digital to promote that book. And I realized that social alone, which was my specialty at the time, was not alone. That how do people digitally consume information? Well, there's a heck of a lot of searches going on. And obviously, those searches are going from Google to YouTube to TikTok. But there's still a lot of searches. And obviously, the role that email can have to nurture an audience, educate them, and convert them, along with social. So this is really what guides the work that I do with my clients. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about that social part. But also, it's understanding, and this is my way of looking at the funnel, and I include advocacy because it's really important, especially when we talk with influencer marketing, is that social is really one that touches every part of this funnel as I've defined it here. That's why it's really critical for companies to get right, and I think that's why what I'm going to talk about today is important. Just some stats here. Social media marketing as a part of budget, February 22, it's still 17.8%. A lot of this money obviously goes into ads, but there's obviously a lot of money going into content and tools as well. So social media is a part of the budget. And in terms of content distribution, we know that social media for content marketing is extremely impactful. In fact, most effective channels used for marketing content to prospective customers, you have social media up there as well. So you have the email, you have the social, and you have the SEO. Social is really one of these big three that we should be focusing more attention on, and that's why I'm here presenting today. So for a lot of companies, though, that I talk to, they like to put their social media on auto drive. They create a strategy, and they just are going through the motions. And after a bit of time, it gets a little stale because we are changing as people. We had COVID. We have new, younger generations that are consuming content very, very differently than we did a few years ago. So I see a lot of companies going through this period where they just want to do something new, and they find that their social media content is just stale and sort of out of date. On the other hand, we have our competitors, the ninjas, right? Younger, more aggressive, maybe startup, maybe newcomers to our industry. But in any industry, there's always newcomers that are quite innovative in their marketing, including social media, that we should be on the lookout for. And then obviously the algorithms, which are always changing and always impacting how much visibility our content's getting. So what I'm talking about today is really what if we could stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Not stand on top of a TV tower over a big city, but it's really about the fact, and we could say the same thing about SEO when we do competitive research on keywords and backlinks, that companies have invested a lot of time and money into this. So therefore, we can learn from their investments just by being able to reverse engineer what they're doing. And that's really what I'm talking about here. Not to copy them, word for word, visual by visual, but just learning from their strategy to apply it to our own. And the beautiful thing is, 20 years ago, we couldn't do this, but social media, it's all public information. Obviously, it takes time, and I'm going to go through the steps you need to do this, but with the exception of how many link clicks our competitors are getting, and without knowing their exact strategy, outside of that, we really do have the ability to do everything that I'm going to be talking about here because it's public information. So what we need to get started, this should not be a surprise, is you need to obviously understand, we need to now get into specifics, right? So we obviously need to understand the specific social media profiles that we want to analyze our competitors on, and obviously the usernames of the competitors. I think you all understand that. The next important thing is how are we going to categorize the content? This is really critically important. But we also need to understand, and not every company does this, but most companies have content strategies. I like to use the analogy of the content buckets. They put their content in different buckets. They create content for those buckets, and they publish at different frequencies. Not every company sticks to this strategy, and companies are often altering the strategy. But I think the concept of categorizing content by strategy, of categorizing your content in social media by these content buckets is still very much mainstream. The challenge then is, how do we categorize content? And this is going to be different in many ways for every person in the room, but also very similar for every person in the room. And I think you'll understand as I go through this. We first begin if we have a blog with our own blog categories, or if our competitors have a blog with their categories, right? These are the categories for my own blog, nealschaffer.com, and this gives you an idea as to what I blog about, because every post fits one of these categories, and therefore social media for many companies is going to be an extension of what they have on their website. So this is a great place to start that gives us topical information as to what we're going to be blogging about. And if you were to look at my social media, you could easily see how often I am publishing what category of content by doing the analysis I'm going to talk about today. But the other things that we need to consider, in addition to the content, we need to understand the frequency, how often our competitor is publishing. We need to understand the medium, i.e., is it a reel, is it a TikTok, is it a YouTube short? I consider them all different. Is it a photo? Is it a carousel photo? Is it a link? It is a status update. It is a LinkedIn poll. We need to understand all of these as well. And then for each one of these combinations of medium, social network, category, frequency, we also need to understand the engagement. We don't know the click-through, but if we can understand the engagement, we can better understand where are those hidden opportunities in our own content that we're missing out on, because our target audience is engaging with our competitors' content on social media that's performing well. So how to determine content categories without knowing your competitor's strategy? I already sort of hinted at this, right? By beginning by looking at blog categories. It's obviously a lot more detailed than that, because even looking at the categories, we don't know the different frequencies, the different weights that each content category has in their entire social media content strategy. So what I like to recommend, and you can really get lost in the content, is to look at top performing posts in terms of engagement over a period of time. If you were to go onto a LinkedIn or a Twitter or Instagram, take the top 20, 50, 10 posts, and look at the top performers, right? What categories are they? What mediums are they? And often you'll find that 1 out of every 10 posts is probably going to be from a category that is highly performing of a competitor. So I'm going to get into looking at more of the data, and at the end, I'm going to recommend some tools that will help you. This obviously requires a lot of work, but this is basically what we're going to be looking at to start. Now, having done this, I will tell you that there are common recurring subject themes. Now, the blog categories are often replicating these. We have products or services. We also might have industries if a company services many different industries. There are also, especially in B2B, companies that focus a lot on the technology they provide. So maybe AI is one of the categories because they have an AI product. Maybe cloud is one of the categories because they sell cloud products and services. We also have strategic objectives. So yes, we're all marketers, but things like employer branding, we see a lot of, especially on LinkedIn. Now, there are some companies that have separate employer-branded accounts, like a Cisco or an IBM or a Microsoft. But for a lot of companies, they're actually mixing their content with some of these other things you might see here. Recruiting, employer branding, corporate social responsibility is obviously huge. SDGs, sustainability, event promotion, and then events like this, and then lead magnet download or other sort of, trying to get people to opt into their email list type of content. So we begin to see it's a little bit more complex than we might have thought, but once again, I think this is where we begin to see the value of understanding our competitors.